In 2012, I was 9 years old and was hounding down a fat PS3. You know, the big one that was stupid expensive? It was $500. That's almost $800 in today's money. Who had money for that back then? Well, I guess my stepdad did, but I digress because it was a hand-me-down. Anyways, one of the first games I ever played was Nier, a heart-wrenching tale about a brother willing to do anything to save his sister, and a deep look at humanity.
Don't let your guard down.
Oh, I got it. You're not going to lose anyone else.
I love this game, and I still do. Years later, I picked up Nier Automata and left it just the same, but I felt like I forgot something. Something I've seen before, but couldn't put a finger on it.
Basking in the newfound light in You murderous savage.
Savage. I think you mean intoner.
She's in there! Take her down! Kill the traitorous demon!
Michael.
Drakengard 3. And I'll be honest, I think I saw this originally because I looked up cool video game CG fights or something along those lines back when I was younger. The director is Yoko Taro, the interesting personality behind Nier, and based on what I've played of those, I thought I missed a masterpiece. But this is a game set in the Drakengard universe, a series based around a religious war between the Union and the Empire, with dragons and knights in a fantasy setting. Doing a quick Google search, it seems both of these games were reviewed relatively well, so I was intrigued to say the least. And once I found out it was a prequel, I won't miss out on it too much. I said screw it, let's try it out. One thing to get out of the way, this game was released in North America in 2014 with its DLC, as the game released a year prior in Japan. Due to only having one release to my knowledge and not having the money in this economy to spend on this ridiculous eBay price for the PS3 copies, like seriously, about like $100 guys? No. I acquired this copy from someone I know to emulate on our PS3 with a PS3 controller for the native experience and a 60 FPS patch. Starting the game, we are Regal the Tail. This is of Zero, our protagonist, one of 5 intoners, and are given that beautiful cinematic I mentioned before. This introduction gives essentially the full premise of the game. You and your sisters are intoners, powerful women who use songs to use energy to conjure what is essentially powerful magics. As Zero said, our goal is to kill your sisters to prevent...
Now, let us sing of the world's end.
The end of the world, it seems. Surely this will come later. With our dragon companion with us and disregard for any civilian casualties, we set off 1 year later, after taking that fall with a new younger dragon than we met at the beginning.
Knock it off! How many times have I told you? Don't roll around in the fucking mud!
Yeah, the humor in this game is different. We have 5 sisters to mark off the list. cleverly named 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, all of which are in different lands, regarding from scorching deserts to a cathedral among a ruined city that looks oddly new. But before we set off, let's address the obvious after that first cutscene. The visuals are not good here. The game came out in 2013, and I will compare it as such. And well, it's not great. The original Nier came out in 2010, and honestly it still looks about the same. And games that came out in Drakengard's release included GTA 5,
I ain't got a very big penis.
The Last of Us, Dead Rising, Alien Isolation. So games weren't exactly horrible looking at this time, so this game kind of stands out. There are definitely instances where the game can look really good, such as this forest area and desert. The texture work isn't great, but it's passable. But the art, well, the art's pretty good, which is to be expected from the Nier team, and Kimihiko Fujisaka, who worked in Nier Replicant, both the old and new one, Drakengard, Fire Emblem Awakening. Truth be told, it's hard to find exactly what he's worked on, but it's good. If you played any modern JRPG, the art will definitely feel familiar. The character design is also pretty good, with every main character looking unique, and enemies, and well, we will get to them in the gameplay portion. If I were to compare the art to anything right now, it looks like the Yoko Taro card game, the voice of cards that came out recently. You can't have a world without sound design and music, and truth be told, it's hit or miss here too. Weapon effects sound just okay.
That again? It's the same damn pattern every time.
They do.
Doesn't really sell the action, but it does its job. Voice acting in the English version, which I played, is actually quite good. I like it. Character lines are delivered well.
Onesie, I think I actually agree with you, which is pretty scary when you think about it.
You do love to provoke our fair and toner, don't you?
Yeah, and I'm gonna love killing you even more.
The game does, however, have the age-old problem of enemy AI sharing about 3 to 4 voice actors that get really old, but the chatter they have is appreciated.
Forward! Get a move on!
But sir, it's so cold!
Call yourself a soldier, rookie?
Ambient here is okay, with forestry sounds, ocean waves, and the sound of you soaring through the skies on Mikhail. The music is just as amazing as the spectrum of Keiichi Okabe. There's a great range from peaceful bits during the rest stages to crazy rock during main boss fights. If you liked any of Yoko Taro's previous games OSTs, you owe it to yourself to give this one a listen. Drakengard 3 takes the series' previous entry gameplay loop and adds a Nier spin to it. The game combat consists of 2 sections, mounted dragon combat on Mikhail, and grounded hack and slash similar to Nier Replicant. You can lock onto enemies to focus, jump, block, and dodge. There's dragon in toner mode, which makes you go crazy, swapping your weapon out for a special moveset that does insane damage. You earn this by killing, taking damage, and dealing damage. Speaking of weapons, there's 4 different categories. Swords, which you start off with, spears, bracers, and chakrams, with different sizes, heavy, medium, and small. These all add up to a staggering 62 different weapons, which can be acquired from missions, sub-missions, chests, and from a court shop for cold, hard cash. Each weapon has a moveset, which you can see by pressing up on the D-pad. They aren't too varied, but visually look neat. When you first start combat, you'll feel that the game's a little jank. You're locked into animations that feel stiff, not Dark Souls stiff, but it's a weird feeling to shake. Movesets vary from the weapon type, but have the same buttons. Triangle gives you a heavy attack you can charge, and square lets you light attack. A very important note is that you do not upgrade weapons. Due to the length of this game and the amount of weapons there is, there's really no need to upgrade because you'll very shortly get something stronger. Also, there's a reward for getting them all, and they get expensive. Speaking of the shop, I almost forgot, but potions feel useless, as I genuinely forgot they were in the game, and used them maybe once. Swords is just a heavy attack that does decent damage. The spear heavy knocks down heavy shields. Chakram puts you into an aiming mode, and you can lock onto a couple enemies. Bracers give you a flurry of attacks to attack just one target for decent stagger. Personally, I find myself gravitating to swords, but the others are necessary for some segments, like chakrams for puzzles and high enemies, and spears for shields, as you can't just jump over them. Dragon combat is actually pretty fun here, and has enough going on to not get boring. When a segment flies around, you can use your jump button to gain height and dodge to dodge, but attacks differ here. Your light attack's a fireball while in the air, and heavy attack sends you charging forward like meta stock prices to the bottom. On the ground, the heavy attack becomes fire breath to torch whatever's in front of you. These flight segments are spaced out enough to not get boring and are a nice change of pace when you do. You also get some interesting dialogue with Zero and Mikhail most of the time. There's also a level up system that seems to just increase your health and damage defense. Honestly, I think this is pointless and should have been done differently. Given how linear this is, an upgrade system similar to DMC for abilities would have been better here, as it's kind of just a stat that exists. If I were to say what this game is like, I'd say it plays more like a late PS2 game than a PS3 game. If I were to compare it to a game, honestly, Devil May Cry 2. I'm sorry. Now that I've talked combat up, let's vent my complaints. Enemies are not great here. Realistically, there's about 14 different enemies, and they aren't that interesting in my opinion. Standard foot soldier you will see here has a few different forms. Knight, Mage, Archer, Bomber, Lancer, and Knight with Shield and Cannon. They are reskinned area to area, so you won't see anything different. The Knights just walk around and swing at you when it comes in groups, Mages fly and shoot magic, and you can chakra them to knock them down. Archers shoot areas that are weirdly inconsistent on accuracy. They can be one-shot by almost anything. Bombers throw or drop bombs, and are also one-shot. These are actually useful for damaging high health enemies. Lancers are annoying and charge at you. Lancers can be found on horses about 3 times in the game, and the cannons I'm pretty sure can't even hit you while you're walking. Every now and then an enemy will introduce, namely specters, which possess and buff enemies, undeads, which need to be hit when they're down, like Dark Soul skeletons. Flying imps are also annoying and should be knocked down with chakrams. There's also these asshole ogrins that just suck to fight even though they're easy to kill. While flying, exclusive enemies are just wyverns, dragons, and specters that fly at the screen and throw attacks. A big issue is also the bosses. The main bosses, the sisters, are actually fine and pretty cool, but the mini bosses aren't. They're the big knights, the golem, the Cerberus, the ogres, the weird ogre, and they're reused a lot. Once every stage, actually. It gets really lame fighting the same boss with just ×2 or just at another time. The level also have this weird issue, and that is everything feels dead. Some maps is fine, like the desert and snowy area, but everything else is empty. The game's linear design would lead typically to a populated map, but isn't the case here. When you're in a location, enemies just run at you, and the map has few boxes for them to stand on, caltrops, and shields. Have you noticed the problem? It's the lack of anything at all. There are no tables, boxes that aren't destroyable, stalls except here, or anything to make the world feel alive. The levels are empty without anything to make them stand out. You kind of just tune out and ignore everything. That vital thing makes levels feel alive. Just look at any of the DMC games from 3 to 5. There are things that populate this world, and that just isn't a thing here. At least obvious linear design from room to room. When you see a door, you know the level's ending, or there's some sort of boss encounter. My favorite maps in the forest area where you fight 3, and the desert because it feels good in context. Of course, the desert's gonna have ruins and cool bones to mix with the design, and the forest has trees and foliage to make it look different. If you're looking for the greatest level design, you really aren't gonna find it here. Within the prologue, you can already get a feel of what type of characters Zero and Mikhail are. Zero is a short-tempered, bitter, and cruel person who just wants to accomplish her goal regardless of the consequences. Mikhail is a young, naive dragon that is very optimistic and reluctant on doing what Zero wants. This creates a dynamic I'm actually a fan of, and I find it enjoyable to see Zero's deadpan, blunt attitude against Mikhail's childish hope. It feels like a spark of happiness and sometimes affection, which contrasts well against the honestly insanely weird ride of a game.
Spot.
The slutty kind.
What's slutty mean?
It means all she thinks about is dirty stuff.
Oh, so she's just like
Wow,
you.
that's rough. The jokes can be pretty funny though. Here we also find a court shop. This is where you can mail order weapons from and get side missions. These aren't too crazy, just go here and kill this, collect this, or survive rounds of combat for cold hard cash. Kinda cookie cutter, but useful to get money and weapons. We push our way through the beaches in these D-Day looking landers and get our taste of dragon combat, which as I mentioned before is pretty good. Slicing our way through, we fight our first boss, get familiar with him. What was it? Hiding? How? Why? Honestly, no clue, and it isn't explained. That is something that actually does become a theme. Things just kind of happen for the sake of the plot, and I'm not too sure how I feel about it. Speaking of things happening, this entire story is just kind of described that way. For instance, I need to kill my sisters as the plot. Now, I think on paper this isn't a horrible thing, but just throwing you into the game with zero reasoning in this game's specific case, I don't think it works. And in some cases, I just feel bad for killing the sisters. On one hand, this game is a slog with your only goal to be kill the sisters because Zero says so, and Evil should give you some reasoning along the way. On the other, once you pass that slog, characters are actually quite nice here, even if they are a little shallow outside of Zero and Mikhail. That group vibe that gets built becomes really nice and exhibits a similar feeling back when I played Final Fantasy XIV with its amazing cast of main and supporting characters. Speaking of characters, let's talk about them a little more. Zero being a bit rude, temperamental, and downright cruel, and at times can certainly build against this game. When I personally enjoy it, it can get kind of whiny down the road, but this is definitely helped by the disciples that are added to the gameplay loop and cast. When she does get moments of weakness or emotion, it does feel rather nice and touching when it does happen. Because of this build-up, it's a slippery slope. Killing the sisters gets their disciples on our side, and they are definitely the most fun part of the cast. Daito gives some of the most deadpan sarcastic lines, which work well as Zero. However, he's cruel and sadistic, making it hard to relate at times.
Stupid pussy Snow. I wasn't yelling that loud.
Seriously? She's blaming the snow?
What was that?
Oh, nothing at all.
Decadus, I have actually nothing bad to say about him. He's one of the actually purely kind and caring characters with an odd sense of preferences.
Where'd he go?
He?
Mikhail. She's not a big fan of using his name.
Why not?
Because I'm a jerk.
Such a devious game to play.
Putting him after a cruel character like Daito was definitely a good design choice. Octa is a very weird, very weird.
You ready to get crushed?
If you only knew the surprise I've got in store for you! I surrender.
You what?
I surrender. I came here because I want to join your cause.
Also kind, but always talking about sex. Because sex is required for intoners to have stable magic. Like many things in this game, it isn't commentary on anything, it's just an overarching bit. However, he also seems to genuinely care. Santa's the last disciple and honestly my favorite. He's loyal to his intoner, the only case where they actually are genuinely in love. I also love his stupid dynamic with the cast, that being throwing out trivia. I'm pretty sure he pulled from his ass.
How about some trivia time? Did you know fairies purify the air by burping?
Oh? I had no idea.
Don't be impressed. He pulls all this shit out of his ass.
Come on. This forest is tainted because it lacks fairies. Don't you see it? Surely I can't be the only one.
I really hate this guy.
The sisters, however, is something we need to talk about. Every sister is incredibly shallow during the main game, with one character trait essentially. Yes, I do specify the main game because they actually get really interesting story beats in the DLC, but we'll talk about that in the DLC section. This honestly makes your motivation very hard to justify. The why we are killing our sisters is just missing, and them having zero personality makes it even harder to justify killing them. I will say the boss themes they have are simply amazing as well. Just listen to it and watch this.
Seriously? That's Thor's demon? Looks more like a goddamn castle. Look at all those cannons on the perimeter. Circle in from below.
I can't! I can't!
Why not?
I swear ring is magic! Your soul's power is making it hard for you!
I really want to love this story, and I honestly do, but the game has so much frustration in it. So much, in fact, I completely rewrote the second half of the video. This story also ends in a cliffhanger that comes out of absolutely nowhere that increases the frustration I have. If you've played any Yoko Taro game, you know what this is about. The routes. For those not in the know, Yoko Taro games have this habit of needing to replay the game to get the full plot. For Nier Replicant and Automata, this works amazingly. It's one of the reasons I love it, as it is a phenomenal design choice in my opinion, that makes you more connected and invested in this world and characters. We don't have that here. Playing the routes for the extra and true endings did make me love this game more. However, it is so much of a slog that I feel many justifiably won't bother with it. This game is already hard to finish, but having the requirements just to see the full story is rough. For instance, to get the last ending you need to find every single weapon, which can suck if you aren't sure what you missed. On the last topic on this game, the DLC. Honestly, as a package, I think they're amazing, and really well done for this game. These DLC are prologues to the main story for each intoner, including Zero, and add much needed character, details, and plot. You learn how deep 3's sadistic creation goes, 5's obsession, 4's sadism and jealousy, 1's plans, and 2's honestly tragic tale, which turned her into my favorite character. You also learn why Zero is the way she is, and what happened to her to make her this way. She was born to a horrible life, and sold off into slavery at a very young age. She tried to kill herself, but the magic flower saved her. She tried to kill herself again, but the flower saved her and split her magic into the intoners and herself into one as well. This flower will eventually destroy the world. She now feels she has to kill herself and her sisters to fix her mess. This is great motivation, and it shouldn't have been locked into DLC or the real ending. Having this earlier, in my opinion, would have made this experience so much better to play. So, do I recommend this game, and what do I think after everything? To be honest, I find this game so very interesting. The best way to describe it is learning to love a game I hate. The combat is horrible, the visuals are ass, and the story is just okay at the end of the day. For some reason, however, I grew to love the characters in the story, and I don't regret playing this. I don't think this is a game anyone should play, as it's just not good. Maybe one day it'll get a remake with how Nier has been getting re-releases, but for now, I'd recommend watching a playthrough on YouTube. Holy hell. Thank you for staying so long if you are still here. I really wanted to try something new with the game. It's a game I was truly interested in. Subscribe if you want more. Leave a like if you liked, a dislike if you didn't, and tell me what was bad so I can do better, as I am loving this. And this really was a new thing for me, trying to explain a game with a heavy emphasis on story. I'm not sure I'll format like this again, but it was fun. And for next time, join me for Ace Combat 7, the aerial war crime simulator that made me fall in love with aerial combat again. Much love.